It was a fantastic panel, you have to agree. And of course, one of the key takeaways from that is that social growth is as important as economic growth. One of the points that was raised. And my personal belief is that for that to happen, social growth must tie into economic growth, and education has to be at the foundation of that momentum. Professor Anju Seth of IIM Calcutta, she spoke of how online education can help, that movement and how we can get more people to come into the education thing. Now, so that is in fact the subject of the second panel, which we will now start, where the subject of the second panel specifically is online higher education, a $5 billion opportunity. Indeed, if anything, the COVID-19 pandemic would have taken that opportunity up significantly. Let me introduce the panel to you. We have with us today Anil Kumar, the CEO and founder of RedSeer; Mayank Kumar, co-founder and managing director of Upgrad. Gentlemen, as I call your name, kindly switch on your cameras. We have Vivash Nayak, executive vice president, HR, L&D and administration of HDFC Life. We have Anurag Seth, VP and head of talent transformation at Wipro. We have Sonia Kutti, head of global human resources at Quest Global. And we also have Vivek Pathak, the former group chief digital officer of Reliance Capital. Okay, I can see only 3 cameras. Others need to switch on your cameras, please. Yeah, all right, wonderful. Great to see all of you here. Thank you so very much for joining us on this panel. And we will, of course, talk about the opportunity that is afforded by online higher education, talk about the challenges that the industry faces in hiring the right people, solutions they've found, what can we do to overhaul our engineering education, through the online system, whether online education is taken seriously at all. It never used to be, 20 years ago, whether it's taken seriously today by you when you're hiring people. These are things that we want to discuss because the audience would also like to know what are the trends in the industry area. So I'll start this, and I would like this to be a group kind of discussion, the kind that we saw in the first panel. So anytime you have a point to make, just raise your hand and say, just jump into the discussion, okay? Don't only wait for me to ask you questions. So we'll start with Anil. And Anil, this $5 billion by 2025 is a very fascinating number. We were talking about it yesterday also. Perhaps you could just decode that for us.
Sure. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I think one of the panelists in the previous discussion was talking about India has a problem of scale. And it just happens that when I was reflecting on today's panel discussion, scale was the biggest thing which came to my mind as well, that, India has a problem or a challenge with education, which is unlike any other country. We have about 40 million graduates, undergraduates at various years in India, and we have about 50 million white collar workers. So put together something about 100 million of white collar professionals plus the folks who are at a various levels of education system. So now that's a massive number, right? 100 million.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at the opportunity of these folks getting education, whether it is in terms of the full-fledged degrees or continuous learning, which is at the later stage of even their working, increasingly there is an importance which is being assigned to the online education. Of course, there's this whole, there are 2 or 3 things which happened, by the way, right, in last few months and year. So NEP, of course, has liberated how various students can really go after education. So it is free of geographic location, it is free of what kind of places, what kind of time scale you can get it, you can have the access to credit bank and all that stuff. So that has made online education a lot more lucrative. The second bit is acceptance of online education from the COVID, right? So we've been forced into this situation where people are getting educated by COVID. So online education is mainstream now. I mean, last 6-8 months, it's become more mainstream. People have started taking it a lot more seriously. And then there's a flurry of activity which has happened from investors' side. Byju's, by the way, is the largest online education company across the world, right, on the K-12 side. Then there are folks like Upgrad, which are coming in. So there's, from the supply side as well, there's a bunch of activity which has happened. So between these 3 things, I think there has been a lot of impact which has come onto the student side. And we did thousands of survey over the last 2 years on the student base as well as on working professionals to understand what is their readiness to go after the online education. And we've seen that if we talk about the working professionals, 80 to 85% of working professionals says that they find value in the continuous learning, which means even post they have really started working, they understand that the education will really add value to them. And almost 25 to 30% of them say that they would prefer online education for this kind of
Okay.
education journey. And similarly, on the undergrad and the postgrad side as well, we see almost 10 to 15% of the students saying that they would be preferring the online education rather than going to some of the offline universities. When you just sum it up all together, then you have a significantly high number of students as well as working professionals ready to go for online educations, and they believe that their degree will be really valued by the potential employer. And that's where this number of 5 billion is coming in from our very recent study.
Right. Thank you very much. And that's quite a decoding, and it's very, very interesting. We tend to take a little more seriousness this online education thing. The unfortunate part is that not everybody has access, right? There was a statistic that came through, I think, a couple of days ago, which I noticed in a paper, which says that 80% of the government school children don't have access to online education, and so their education is completely stopped since the lockdown began, which is unfortunate. But there are certain things that are in our control, certain things that are not in our control. But I would generally ask questions to the whole group, and I'd like you to discuss and deliberate on these. So, for example, I would start off with this number that Anil has given, and this acceleration in online education. It is like Anil said, this Byju's, this Upgrad. There are many others, right? And Upgrad is also doing a phenomenal job. And it's all about online, right? So, how do you see, as HR heads and as technology heads of your organizations, you are the ones who are responsible for taking the organization forward, right, on the technology thing, and making sure that your workforce doesn't get stale and their skills don't get outdated. So how do you see this entire, this online higher education, this acceleration in the online higher education, especially in the need for organizations like yours to continuously upskill your employees, right? So maybe I'll start with Vivek, and then anybody else can join in.
Sure. So thanks, Alokesh. See, even before I get down to the needs of the corporate world, as far as this upskilling and reskilling is concerned, let us also acknowledge a fundamental truth that the era of linear living is over. For every individual across the world, whether he's part of formal education or currently employed, I mean, this once in a lifetime kind of a change that we are all witnessing has definitely accelerated. But the classic model of education, I will do this and then I will do higher education that will lead to a certain amount of a job and an opportunity which will lead me to a certain amount of linear growth. I think time has come to acknowledge that that model doesn't work. The human mind is ultimately a pattern seeking tool. If, then else. If I work hard, then I get into a good university, and then I land into a good job, and then. And if it doesn't happen, I just fall off the cliff. The thing is, there is very little evidence now that you can keep faith in any pattern for any long. And especially given the way we are connected in the digital world today, the world is way too complex for anybody to take a linear path, right? And let's face it, the education system that all of us, especially at least on this panel, that we have benefited from, does not cut it anymore. I mean, there is growing disharmony between the curriculum taught and the skills that are in demand. And with increased unemployment and probably even deepening student debts, because education is getting expensive. It's not like television where technology will start reducing the cost of television. Education still requires a fair amount of intensive engagement, pedagogy, the trends that you need to catch up on. It may finally break the proverbial back of the camel that formal education claims to be. Mm-hmm. And in this brave new world that we are part of, I think degrees are going to become redundant. And learning has to, the degrees have to make way for, more skill-based in terms of I mean, you're already seeing
Vocational kind of training, you
education
mean?
companies like Apple, Google, where degree is no longer a prerequisite to apply. What is important is the skill set that you bring to the table.
Okay. Who wants to come in? Anurag, you need to switch on your audio. Everybody can switch on audio now.
Yeah. So if I can
Yeah,
just build on what Vivek said, he's right, that the skills are important here. What we try to look at is that when the engineering graduates whom we hire earlier, and we used to take them into the organization, typically about a couple of semesters back, we offered a pre-joining program. And in a pre-joining program, we will typically give them a lot of hands-on labs and virtual labs. Basically, it's all online. So it's virtual labs you give them. You give them some mentors so that they can learn and are ready to join the industry. And there we realized that the gap that they had in their understanding in the college versus what is required by the industry was quite significant, right? And while we worked on those gaps, and when the students came in, we definitely saw there is a big difference in their readiness, and their training time reduced significantly after they joined in. We tried to take that initiative even back to the colleges. So, for example, we looked at about 100 odd engineering colleges, where tier 2, tier 3 typical colleges, where we actually taught the professors. So we got the professors to our campus. We gave them, again, all programming practices and what is required by the students when they join the organization. And they went back, and through online mechanism, again, through virtual labs and training material and everything, we continue to teach them. And at the end of about 7-8 months, they got a Wipro certified faculty certificate, right? So that now that you are ready, about 300 professors we picked up in the first batches. And these 300 professors went and taught more than 10,000 students in their classes. So they kind of took up a curriculum, they taught the students. Now, where we found a blend between the engineering education, where it's a foundation, versus what reskilling you are doing to the students before they join the industry. So it is, they could join any other company, even our peer companies. And that initiative took up so much. And the people who joined our organization, we could see the difference between the caliber or the readiness, let me call it the readiness of those students versus the ones who had not gone through this particular program. And as we speak this year, we thought, is it really about engineering graduates? We actually went to the BSc colleges and say, okay, in the BSc colleges also, many science graduates joined the organizations and say, can we do that experiment? And we found the excitement level is quite significant. The number of colleges who actually applied for this program, we were actually staggered. We thought we had to request them that send your professors and do that. And then just for awareness, we call, let's say, some HODs and principals. There are about 100 HODs and principals who came to our campuses in several batches, and they were very interested to know what's happening to this particular thing. The point I'm trying to make is that definitely the colleges do realize that there is a gap between the readiness for the industry versus what is taught in the thing. I do agree to the point, I do believe in the point that it is not so much about reskilling as such, but it is about learnability for them. Because whatever skills we teach them, obviously though they are relevant on the day one when they join us, and to that extent, we find that their project deployability enhanced significantly. Within the first few weeks itself, these students became deployable. But the fact that when we taught the professors as to how you teach the fundamental concepts of programming to them, we may have picked up 1 or 2 languages, but then how you teach them those things became much more important thing. So now these guys are much more ready to learn.
Like right now there's COVID and nobody is able to come to your campus. Professors will not be able to come to your campus right now.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So we did it with the campus, and now we are continuing the program. It's all happening online. Okay. And these professors spend some 4 to 5 hours a day for a period of 2 to 3 weeks, and they're all learning. Okay. And the programs are happening even now.
For all you know, they might leave professorship and get into industry and join Wipro as a programmer.
No, the idea is that if we had to teach the students, those 10,000 students, there is no way we could have reached that scale.
Yeah, that's true.
We thought the method of teaching the professors, certifying them, and they in turn teach the students. But of course, we offer all our labs and training content.
This whole idea that you have brought of reskilling before joining the industry is a great thing. Vivash, Sonia, I want you also to jump into this before I go to Mayank.
So Alokesh, if I can go next, I think I completely agree with what Anurag said. It is even at Quest, what we have done is really partnering with institutions to make sure that the skill and the talent that comes into the organization is ready, right? Traditionally, organizations have spent those 30, 60, 90 days in getting these graduates who come in to become ready for the job that they're going to do, right? Now, a simple
Induction
fact,
training is becoming more
absolutely,
complex.
induction training, skill training, technical training, whatever we may, call it. The fact of the matter is, and research will tell you that for any job, okay, any job that you take today, in 1 year, 10% increase in there is in the skills that are required to do that job within a year. So let's take a job that was relevant in 2017, okay, just as an example. And if you look at it today, about 30% of it would have changed. If that is the kind of skill that is required and is changing with every passing year, and any major significant events that happen actually accelerate this rate of change that we are talking about, then the need for academia as well as for organizations to be relevant becomes all the more important. Even if we are talking about 10% for each job, it's impossible for the internal organization, be it HR, learning and development, to do it on their own. Right? And that is why partnership, either with educational institutions or with firms like Upgrad, become all the more relevant.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think one thing that we should, and a little bit of difference in what Vivek said, Alokesh, is that, when we say that it is going to become largely about learning online and coming with courses and not necessarily having a degree, I think it'll take a little bit of moment to say, why do we go after the degrees? Why do we go after the colleges? Right? When you try to hire a person
without a degree.
Right. The point is, when you hire somebody from an institute of repute, right, you are ticking off on certain things which are required for you as an organization, as the person being a high performer. Yes, he's got good grades all throughout. Hardworking. Yes, he has worked through it. Right. Good understanding. Yes, she understands concepts very well. That is why we try to make our job easier by saying, if I hire from this college, these things are taken care for me. Then I have to focus on this balance that is required for me. Imagine trying to hire only through skills. The work for the organization increases. So somewhere the partnership also has to be that, I define as an organization what I need, and then that gets provided to me by ticking off those boxes. That is what is the bridge that needs to be. And if that is something that we do successfully as organizations to define and as partners to provide, then I think we have a win-win solution that will work.
Fantastic. And Vivash, just coming to you, in fact, life insurance is such a huge employer of people in this country, right?
Yeah. So
I'd love to know your perspective on this.
Yeah. So my thoughts are, when you build a learning ecosystem in the organization, the learning ecosystem needs to be robust. So you can't just depend on one type of, training resource to kind of train or skill your people. Whether it's offline, whether it's online, whether it's mobile learning, group learning, you got to have multiple elements in the learning ecosystem for you to kind of scale your people. Coming back to this question in terms of, life insurance, we kind of recruit close to around 8,000, 10,000 people every year. Getting people from the lateral market is not very easy. Or even when you kind of hire people from the lateral market, people come with a lot of baggage. So, as an organization, you tend to kind of go to campus and recruit freshers. Now, when you recruit freshers, the typical traditional way of recruiting is look for people from good colleges with degrees and kind of hire these people. But invariably, if you talk to any HR person, whether it's life insurance or otherwise, when you recruit people from colleges, you recruit them for the aptitude that they have. Invariably, 80% of them are not employable. When I say they are not employable, they don't have the requisite skills for them to be successful on the job. So how do you bridge the gap? And, to bridge the gap, then you again put a training, curriculum in place, either in-house, or you tie up with, education providers, like online education providers, like an Upgrad, or maybe an offline education provider, who kind of design a course which is absolutely bespoke to your company requirements, train them, they get a degree, and they kind of, get into the organization. I think what online does is it helps you scale up that need of yours. In an offline thing, you still expect these students who are graduates to kind of go on a campus and learn it for a period of 2 months, 3 months, complete that course, and then come to you. When it's online, I think the scalability is much, much higher. But having said that, I do believe that, there's a place under the sun for both offline and online. I think online is scalable. And if the demand for these resources is extremely high, I think online is the way to kind of go. Especially if you're spread across, the country, and where you require people across the country, I think online is as a much more scalable model is the way I would look at it.
Fantastic. And, online, of course, Mayank, just coming to you from the grad perspective, online is a huge thing. But, we are also talking about the need for degrees and whether we really need degrees or not in future, like we were saying. Sonia's implication was that without a degree, nobody will even look at your CV, right? If somebody sends me a CV for a job in my team, पहले तो उनका graduate है या नहीं है, if you're not even a graduate, I'm not even going to look at you or call you or anything. My organization will not also allow, right? Most of our organizations have this thing built in. But this whole degree thing, doing a BSc or a BCom or a BA, and then doing a course with upgrad to get into an insurance job or get into a Wipro kind of job. This 3 years of wastage, right? Of that degree. Can we move away from that model? Do you think upgrad and others can move to a model where you don't need the degree, you need the skills, and you show the certificate for the skills? What kind of acceleration are you seeing towards that trend?
No, I think I'm on the camp that Sonia said. I think degrees are a very age-old caste system that the society has always sort of evolved into. So you don't know me, I don't know you. I ask you which college you are from, and if you tell me the name of the college, I get a broad sense of yours. So if you are from the double I's of the world, you are the top caste, and then sort of all those things people have created in their own minds that this caste
mostly in the mind.
Yeah, it's in
mostly
the mind.
In the mind, because I've known several people who are from backward villages and studying in the worst schools, and they get the best results.
Yeah. And I'm saying that caste system is also in the mind. I mean, there's no scientific methodology as to why this exists, why it does not exist. But it's an age-old understanding. And Sonia is right that, look, I mean, when you're inundated with a lot of CVs coming in, how do you sieve through something? And if there's a filter which says, let me filter with the degree type, it becomes easier. And therefore, it's an information asymmetry breaking, Alokesh, as I see it right now, that look, I don't know much about you. And I will ask you, where did you study from? Therefore, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm taking a slightly more
that's fine.
In jest, I'm saying this point that if you see the matrimonial script also, right? I mean, you write down your height, you write down your skin color, you write down your caste, you write down your education. And therefore, I say it's of that zone that this is a very important sort of signaling parameter. Now, having said that, I do believe that what you get learned in that 3-year focused approach is very, very important. And I genuinely don't feel that 3-year, 4-year learning can be replaced with a 1-year online module. And I know those of the world are talking about it. But I mean, you have to also appreciate to ask, why did degree exist the way it exists? And degree exists the way it exists is because in that 3-year, 4-year period, you have a very concentrated way in which a learner learns. And therefore, if you see most of the best institutions have got that high discipline, high rigor, high approach. Now, having seen the proliferation of a higher education institution, many a places that has taken a dip. But if you look at how a Harvard teaches, how a Cambridge teaches, how an Oxford will teach, there's a very strong pedagogical tool which actually helps build the right curiosity, the right ability to learn, and the right ability to unlearn, which I don't think that a skill-based learning can offer that. So I do believe that higher education will continue to stay and do the job that is required to be done. But at the same time, Alokesh, what we will see and start having is just-in-time training or just-in-time education or lifelong learning, that you got the polio vaccination at one time. Now polio will not come to you, but at different points in time, you will require different kind of vaccination to stay relevant to what's happening in the infrastructure and ecosystem. So while we'll have a lot of conversation about degree disappearing, I don't see that happening at least in the next 5 to 10, 15 years, because I think there is a very strong rationale that they're solving for. We will have to build a parallel structure, what we're doing right now, and hope that we can imbibe a lot of best practices from offline and degree education and build a combination of skills plus degree education such that the person gets a holistic point of view, just rather than getting a piecemeal skilling aspect in the journey.
Absolutely. And in fact, lifelong learning seems frightfully long, but the fact is that it is a fact of life today, right? With technology is changing. So the next question that I want to bring to this group is this lifelong learning, and the lifelong reskilling or relearning, whatever you want to call it, how do you see online education playing a part in this? And how do you, for example, we have HR heads, we have an expert in Anil who does research, he understands. We have 3 HR heads over here, and we have a technology head in Vivek. I want to question you from your own perspectives about what is it about online learning that can help in this, in this lifelong learning new paradigm that has come up? Because everybody needs to keep learning. Even doctors are taking tests now, right? After years.
I think the biggest advantage that online offers, and I'm sure Mayank probably would be able to add more color to this, is that it helps contextualize learning to the kind of environment that you're working in. So for example, if somebody is being hired at a remote branch for a life insurance company, there is a certain context in which that person operates, versus getting somebody in the manufacturing space, what kind of context that he's operating. And that even goes true for even students. I have young kids. They love a lot of these cartoons like Minecraft, Roblox, and I don't know what all that stuff is. But now those programs, those cartoons actually give an opportunity to learn fundamental concepts of programming and fundamental computational concepts, right?
Correct.
So I think what online does open up an ability to contextualize the learning in the environment that you're, versus getting into a bit of a universal platform, which probably university provides. When I say that the degrees may lose relevance, it doesn't mean that they go away. The only thing is we also need to solve for 1.3, like the panel before ours was talking about, that it cannot be the elites that are kind of running the show. There are still billions of people out there who need to get a fair shot at good life. And the classic problem with university, at least as it exists today, let's see how it plays out over the next couple of years, is that there is a high entry barrier. There is a high entry barrier to this. And the idea is to democratize to the extent that possible. Now, how do you do that? And today, the raw materials are in place. Data is cheap, platforms are open, and we have a whole new generation which knows how to interact with digital tools. Even stuff like NLP ensures that the gateway language, which typically has been English for any higher education, is no longer holding its unfair advantage over us. Somebody who is good, and IQ is never a subject of you knowing English. IQ can be across the world, anywhere. There could be some remote location where there could be a person who doesn't know a word of English, but he could, from an IQ level, he could be fairly well accomplished. NLP, machine learning, these models are now commoditized. They can help put the right context. They can actually bring the scale, and at a cost which makes it even financially viable for my.
So, as a technology head, Vivek, if I were to ask you, there are 3 HR heads of very large organizations on this panel. What would you tell them that what should be your approach to technology reskilling? They have huge tech workforces. Wipro is a tech company, right? But even a life insurance company and even Quest Global, they have massive technology workforces. What is the approach?
I would be preaching to the choir.
Educating professors the way Anurag is doing is a fantastic way, but is there any other way?
So I would be preaching to the choir, but I'll tell you what we attempted and got some modest success at Reliance Group. There has always been this talk about, modernizing our workforce, and that is the classic conversations that we have during our annual plans, how to get these guys motivated. Should we herd them into a classroom and make them sit and listen to this lecture and give them some kind of snacks to get them excited? We said we'll take a slightly different approach. We said that we'll try to gamify some of the concepts that they need to learn in the context of their job. And to that extent, we actually made some forays towards building out very small mobile gaming apps where, for example, somebody at a junior level, the person who actually commutes 2 hours, and I live in Bombay, so I can talk about the Bombay context, who goes in a local train for 2 hours sitting instead of watching TikTok, you might actually do kind of a quiz, which probably adds to your credits. And at the end of the day, you're also learning some concept about sourcing, concept about RPF and stuff like that. So right. I think there are ways to put this in context, and something that we found some modest success in our organization, and it did not, it does not disrupt the existing L&D environment in a big way. In fact, if anything else, it's a welcome addition to what already is existing.
Just to add to this question, for the HR folks on the panel, as well as to Mayank and Anil, the point is that when you are hiring people from the market, right, we know what problems you're facing. Their skills are not matching with the skills that you need. And, Anurag, you've already given us one example of how you're solving it, but I'd like to hear more about how you're going to solve these things. Vivash, maybe you can give us some light on
Alokesh,
that.
I think for me, online education is scalable education. The traditional way is you identify the training needs, make a cohort of people, put them in a classroom and teach them. And there are a lot of limitations in terms of how many people you can train using this route. Online is you can curate a set of online courses, offer them to people, and people can pick up whatever they think is relevant for them. And this is location agnostic. This is training on demand. This is like, you offer a platter of different types of online courses to your staff, and they can pick up things that are relevant to them. You can gamify the whole thing, and you can have SOPs around in terms of, who's probably, and, so they can earn credits, and based on the number of credits that they earn, you can link it to their career growth, so on and so forth. But that's the other part. I think in simple words, online education is scalable education as far as, we are concerned.
Okay. Who wants to go?
Yeah, so just to add to,
No,
sorry,
go ahead, please.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So Lukesh, just to maybe summarize some of the points which panelists spoke about, right? So I think in terms of the need of continuous learning and the benefits it brings to people, I think that's unquestioned, right? So everyone agrees that the skill sets requirement is changing so fast that whatever you learned 2 or 3 years back, a lot of it is getting redundant. So you need to sort of do a regular maintenance and overhaul of what you need to do. Now the question is, the challenge is all about execution. When I know that I need to keep on taking certain courses over a period of time, but I'm not taking as a white collar employee, then why am I not doing it? And that's where I think the execution related challenges are the ones which we need to really solve for. What we've observed, at least, that online education is able to solve for a lot of these execution related challenges, right? So if you need to just compare between how you need to go through this journey in an offline setup versus in an online setup, then few things, right? So one is, of course, scale. So we've spoken about it at length. How can we make sure that the education is democratized and high quality education is available to all set of people, whether they are coming from the smaller cities, large city, different kind of education backgrounds or the languages. So at scale solution, online can do that. The second is from the location point of view. The other, your position in Kerala, you're in UP, small town in Madhya Pradesh, wherever, right? So how can we ensure that irrespective of where you are, either long-term traveling or short-term traveling from your day-to-day office schedule, you are able to continue that? Online education is able to ensure that you're able to take that. The third bit is the self-paced, right? At what time do you take it? Do you want to take it over a weekend? Do you want to take it over a period of a month or 2 months or a year? Do you want to take it this year or next year? So there has to be time or self-pace around it. Online education is able to do that. Fourth bit is in terms of the benchmarks, right? You're doing an education program in isolation where you're being measured only against 5 or 10 people is of very limited use. One of the big things which online education institutes are able to do is put a benchmark saying that, hey, when we look at thousands of people, you are sort of at a 99 or 98 percentile, which online education is able to do with large databases of people and students who are enrolled with them over a period of time, a big benchmark. And the fifth one, which is probably one of the most important one, is the feedback loop, which runs through the industry. What you're learning and what industry is wanting, there's an agility, which online education can really actually change for and really ask you to go with education, which is more relevant. So I think these are 4 or 5 things which I can think
even
of.
the online educators need to be synced into the ground realities at times, right? To make sure that the feedback happens properly.
Exactly.
Sonia, Anurag, and Mayank in that order.
So, Alokesh, I was just thinking, what Anil said is actually the value of online education being anything, anytime, anywhere, right? That's what the benefit essentially is for an organization, for the employee, for a student in college, anywhere. I think the one important thing that sometimes we miss out on is that some things sound very, very appealing, very sexy, okay? Right now, you see anybody and everyone in their spare time, what they want to learn is AI or machine learning, right? Because that seems to be the coolest thing to be involved in, to get educated on. The thing that is missed out is, sorry?
Is that true?
I think so. A lot of, I have
If you speak
a
with
lot of,
techies.
yeah,
For the benefit
I
of the
have
400 people who are listening in, they
I
should know
have
what
a
to go and
lot
learn.
of people in the organization who absolutely wanting to get into these fields, right? Because they think, hey, this is the next thing that is coming. This is what is going to be the future. The
Right.
element that is missed out is how does that actually put into your overall career trajectory? Where does all this come in, right? So as organizations also, the impetus is also on us to ensure that what we are offering to people in some way makes logical sense to them. If I'm offering online education about XYZ course, which that person doesn't necessarily see how it fits into his or her career trajectory, I will not have takers for it. While I might tell the person, do it in a bus, do it on your way to work, the thing is the person doesn't believe in it. The what's in it for me is absolutely something that needs to be addressed, which is why today a lot of people, even without an organization telling them, are taking up courses on their own, right? A lot of
Right.
things that they think benefit them, either on the personal
Yeah.
or professional front, they take it on their own onus. It is easily available. I think that's the most brilliant thing about online education, that it's so easily accessible and it is in your time, right? If I had to do the same thing via a college or via a formal education system, it's a whole new type of thinking that I have to get into. How do I take time off? How do I go and attend? I think that's
Yeah.
the brilliance that is there. So there is an
Absolutely.
interplay of how we position it and how we place it before a learning audience as well.
Anurag?
Yeah, so I mean, I would get a little different element of continuous learning,
And while you
right?
finish
So
what you're
in a,
saying, Anurag, the other question that you need to answer is, would you hire somebody who's in online education, but not the reskilling kind of online education, but a graduate from an online education, like an IGNOU? That is the
okay,
second part of the question.
I'll make an attempt to answer that. So, the point that I was talking about was continuous reskilling within an organizational context itself, right? So the technologies are changing. You have to keep on, people have to keep on learning. And as Sonia was saying, what is there for me? Why should I learn more technologies and things like that? So, and it sometimes become very difficult that, you move a person from a project, say, okay, 5 days you take off or 10 days you take off and go and do some training program. It doesn't work that way, right? Because you'll never get the best of the people who will get reskilled on the other things. Now with this online education, online skilling, let me call it, the way you are able to do is that if it's a program, it's an immersive skill program, all these, these sexy technologies that we're talking about, it takes about 120 hours to 150 hours for you to really spend some good amount of time, internalize the learning, do some hands-on and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you tell them, no, if you can spend 10 hours a week, let's say 2 hours a day or 10 hours a week beyond your regular project time, and you do it over a period of 3, 4, 5 months, and you get a certificate out of it, and that certificate has a value that you become a full stack developer, or you become a AI engineer or machine learning engineer on this. Now people say that it goes back into their resume, whether the resume is used within the organizational context or it is used outside the organizational context. The fact of the matter is that you have done it for yourself because it adds to yourself, and you can do it in addition to the regular project work that you do. Because otherwise, if I'm working on a technology which is a legacy technology, nobody is going to move me onto a new age technology and say, okay, you take 3 months off, do this training and go into the new project. Now here I am. For me, I have got the opportunity that I can learn anytime, anywhere, any pace, any device, and all I need to do is to spend 10 hours a week, which could be on a Monday to Friday 2 hours, or it could be just one Saturday or on something. And I finished that certification, and now I knock the doors of the organization or a neighboring organization to say that I am now ready, a full stack engineer, or I am a machine language engineer, and now you hire me for that particular thing, creates a different space in itself. And that is what is a use case that the online education is bringing to the table on this one. To your other question, whether we will hire people from who do not have a degree and we hire that, I don't think
No,
we
they
will
have a
do that.
degree, but they have an online degree.
Yeah, okay. So open university or online degree.
Yeah.
I don't think the organizational context we do that today. I mean,
Exactly.
we don't do that. And some of the reasons I think Sonia had mentioned earlier that, when you are taking somebody, it is not only about the skill that the individual possesses, but, the person's, what that person's competence is, the fact that he or she has done a degree from a reputed college or any college actually, which is our stream, it makes a difference to the person. And in fact, very interesting, thing that we try to do, that there are very good people in colleges which are not so-called empaneled colleges. Typically any organization will empanel some 100, 200 colleges that you will go to. And if there were people like in Far East in India, with those colleges may not be empaneled, but you could have very bright people who are staying there. So we started kind of a nationwide test that you conduct. Now from that test, you may even take very small 10% people, but there you are able to get to the caliber of the people that are all over the country. So you do take, but education is important because it creates a base for yourself. Colleges teach you soft skills also. Colleges teach you learnability element of it. They teach you the foundations. So I don't think we will do away with that thing that you don't have a degree, because online degree, you do not interface with people. You don't learn from your peers, right? You don't have in the college, there is a lot of interactions that you do. So a lot of personality development that happens is very important for an organization. To that extent, we definitely want that value. Reskilling is important for what the business needs.
Right. So Mayank, to come to you with this same question, and whether the fact is that should organizations like yours be focusing purely on reskilling? Because I believe you also are planning undergraduate courses, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we'll be doing online degrees as well. Yeah.
You'll be doing online degrees as well. So now an online degree from, an upgrad and an online degree from, a traditional Indian university or a college, you're going to be competing, right? So tell us a little about how you see the online, education thing panning out over the next 4-5 years.
Yeah, no, so for me, I think if 5 of them, my co-panelists can say that, look, we will hire online degree guys. I think ET gets the headline and we get the right mileage for upgrade. The 5 largest sort of recruiters have agreed to sort of hire without an offline degree and are looking at online degree seriously. I think 2 things, Alokesh, what online degrees had been, and Anurag is quite correct in that context, that look, there is a perception that it is not rigorous, it does not involve as much of human interaction, and therefore it's a one-way learning. And therefore, what you're learning is not the most strong, and you have not gone through the rigor associated with a campus-based education. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, I've had folks who come from a Navy background, never attended any college or university, always did through distance learning program, did our program and is now one of the lead data scientists at Z5, which is one of the large OTT provider. There's a guy who actually, one of, Anurag's competitor went to the campus to another guy who was doing a program with us, to the campus program. Only one company visited. There was only one guy who was not hired, who was our learner. And after 4 years back, he did our online program, and he's now gotten an opportunity to work as machine learning engineer with Amazon in Canada. Wow. And that's a job that a guy from IIT and Stanford would aspire to get into. I think the beauty of online programs these days, Alokesh, is that there is a fair amount of rigor that has come into, and that rigor results in some kind of outcomes. And I think as the industry matures, more and more of those successful results coming out of a guy who never had access to formal education, someone who was jobless at the end of the college education and getting into best institution. And a lot of our guys are working at very sort of strong projects at Wipro, at Quest, at Reliance, and at HDFC Life. Goes to show on that, look, over a period of time, we have to be at it. We have to generate strong success, because then if successful people go out, more people will start believing in the medium. And therefore our approach is, let's build successful stories. That successful stories will get a lot of non-believers to believe in the model. And once we get to that level, I think it's just, everyone has said the positives about online education. We just need to now prove the efficacy of online education, which takes its own time, but we are at it, and we'll continue to build that efficacy and success stories to build the credibility of the system as well.
Yeah. So Alokesh, I think I wanted to comment, on Mayank, because I think there's a very key thought over there, right? The quality of what is offered by various, various people who provide online education is what will then become the differentiator. Right? Like today we talk about the double I colleges and we say we will hire from here or we will hire from there, etc. That's because they have created a very credible place for themselves. I think that is the evolution that will happen over the couple of years that we will see, where online educators will set out a space for themselves. We will know as hirers, as recruiters, that, hey, this course done from this place is actually quite valued, right? We do it for Microsoft online accreditation. We know not everyone can just get it. right? So when we see something like that, we know that, hey, we have to accord that value to it. I think that is the journey that will now come about, especially now that, you know, with the COVID times and everybody is on this platform. That is what I think will become a differentiator.
And if
I
may,
agree.
if I may
agree
just
with.
add a little
I agree.
point on
Sorry.
that
Okay,
one.
Vivash,
Vivash.
Vivek, after Vivek, I'll come to Vivash.
Okay, sure.
Which is true. See, at the end of the day, quality does matter. And look at it this way, like 5 years out. I mean, there is obviously in the US, given the pandemic, Google has just launched their Google certification program where they're very specific. For $49, you're going to get trained on skills that are in demand today. Versus compare that to say $120,000 3-year graduate program where there is an opportunity cost of the person being completely. I mean, I'm not taking away the basics that you just need to understand philosophy and stuff like that at an early, at the primary school, K1, K5, K12 level. But beyond that, and that is where everybody falls off the cliff, because to my earlier point, you can't do it just for a narrow band of people in this country. It has to go much, much bigger. Right. Imagine a scenario where Microsoft certification programs are available. There is a Google career certificate available. In 4 to 5 years, Upgrad offers something. In 4 to 5 years, and some of this is in conjunction with corporates like us, where we discuss and figure out what do we need, because we also have our 3 to 5 year business plans, what kind of skills or what kind of people that we would require. In 5 years, it becomes like a tradable skill set accreditation, where you would say, okay, I'm going to put like a point system and say that if you have done these certifications and they are as recent as 18 months vintage and you have worked or interned at these places, I'm willing to overlook your university grades. I'm willing to overlook that you're not a triple I guy. So I think that's the clever opportunity, which obviously how this will play out depends a lot on the willingness of all the ecosystem players and also the funding that they would get to be able to get some of these experiments out there.
Absolutely right. Vivash, you had a point, and we'll close the panel after you finish.
Yeah, similar to what Sonia said, I think corporates are looking for quality talent. So whoever is able to kind of offer that quality education, whether it's an online service provider, education service provider, or an offline, I think corporates will tend to kind of gravitate towards those education providers. So, you know, tomorrow, if I have a choice between getting a BCom graduate from a university and probably, you know, a 2-year certification course, which is good quality, and I know for a fact that the student who kind of, you know, has that certification is better, there is no reason why I should just kind of, you know, go to a, you know, somebody who holds a college university degree and not to an online education provider. I think as online education evolves, there will be a set of players which will differentiate themselves from the rest. And that's where I think corporates will tend to kind of gravitate in that.
Yeah, it's like the evolution of any emerging industry, right? This also will take its own pace, will take its own time. And gradually the good players will be sifted from the rest. And thank you all very, very much for this discussion. There are lots of learnings from here. Most of all, that AI and ML is still the right thing to follow, right? For people. Yeah, go for it. And thank you all very much. You know, I know how valuable your time is. You're all very busy people. So deeply appreciate the fact that you took time out for us today. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you very much, Alokesh. Thank you,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.